Hi there, this is Carrie Ellis, author of 21st Century Superhuman. This is our 21st Century Superhuman show. And today I have with me Wayne, who is the developer and builder of this amazing circular device you see behind him. We'll talk about in just a second. Hi, Wayne. How are you today?
Excellent. Always excellent.
Always excellent. I love that, and I love the energy level that you're operating from. Today we're going to be talking about the immortal gene and the aging process because we feel with our understanding and our new experiences with plasma technology, we're really tapping into this eternally youthful state. And I just love it. I think everybody I know who's been around plasma devices in the last couple of years is really starting to experience this. You know, illness is going away and clearing up, and a greater sense of energy and youthfulness. So I know my first introduction to you was coming to teach a workshop in Yelm, Washington, and we put on a big expo there with Heather Bryant, and Whitney Fisher was part of it. And you brought forward for the first time this amazing, beautiful piece of equipment called Miracle. You want to tell us a little bit about how you developed that and what it is?
Well, I guess my initial intention with this was the ability that it would improve the well-being of the human being, of all of us, of human beings, of animals as well. And it was and still is this huge experiment, because I use the analogy that I give birth to this baby, and I knew it had a great potential in this future, but I had no really understanding of what its capability was. And there's no textbooks, there's no reference to what this was going to become. It was absolutely out of the box, based on a concept. So it was a big adventure for me just to be able to see if I could even build it. But then the field that come out of this, because of the sacred geometry that's used, is so coherent, and it is so extraordinary, which you've experienced and can confirm for me, that we knew we had something really out there that had unlimited potential from my perspective. So we did open up a tiny little office in Rainier, Washington, where we made this available to the public. And it's just getting bigger and bigger with the experiences and the understandings of where this is going.
Yes. You know, and when I sat in it for the first time, I felt like I was in a Stargate, I called it. But because it's a plasma collection device, would you call it a plasma collector, so to speak? It sort of, I don't know, what do you tell us a little bit about your feeling about how it is dealing with the plasma.
Generating of its field, and just about everybody that comes into it for the first time experiences something very unusual, because we're not familiar with this field. So there's no AC current going into it. There's no DC batteries. It's totally self-generating, which is a phenomena in and of itself. And I guess I would call it, it's an amplifier, or working like an antenna is what it's doing, given how we're experiencing physiological, but also mindful and spiritual experiences when you get in there. It's having impact on the human brain as well in a very beneficial way. So it's just an expanding possibility.
Yeah, and you were to give credit to where the idea came from, you were in the Keshe Foundation teachings about the new plasma technology that's emerging, and kind of got the idea of how to put this together, and then began taking it out into your own developmental process, right?
Yep, and I've been getting downloads of information. I'll wake up in the morning and have insights on how to go about this in some regards. It was made very clear to me in the beginning that phi ratio was really critical to what I was doing. So there's a very exactness in how I set out the parameters, the sizing, and the measurements.
So I know that you have actually had tests done to see what's going on with your aging process, because everybody who sees you, that knows you, says, Wayne, you're getting younger, what's going on? So tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so before we get into this, I just want to make a bit of a qualifying statement here, because you and I are going to really get out of the box today. And for a lot of people, because either they're scientific observations, or they think they're special and know-it-all, belief systems, because you look around and everybody is evidence that no, this can't be done. It's a limitation to how we take and expand on possibilities. And I heard some time ago now when Voyager 1 reached the outer limits of our solar system, I think is where it was at. And the scientists gave a public report. They said, so much of what we have held as conjecture or philosophy or our understanding of space and science has been incorrect. And we are going to have to go back to the drawing board and really sort of refigure out a bigger picture as to how reality really exists. And I think it's very similar with the human body. We only use 15 or whatever % of our brain. Some politicians less, a little bit less. And it's not that it's there just to hold our faces in place. It has to have a function. We have, and the numbers are different between billions and trillions of DNA possibilities. They have to have a function, but what is it we don't understand? And then even if we do understand, how do we access the DNA to change something about our life? And so today it's about aging, and it's going to come from two parameters. One, what I've been observing, and I'm certainly many others, as to the effect of the plasma on the body and plants. And then we're going to get into a little understanding about my observations on and philosophy about the whole aging process.
Right, and you come from an agricultural background as well, right, Wayne?
Yeah, a farm kid growing up in the far outskirts in the wilderness. So nature was my playground, and I was a kid that had a lot of questioning about how reality was, because a lot of it just didn't make sense to me. And part of it was I would look at some of these old folks, I mean, 35 and 40 years old, and say, you know, it just doesn't seem right to me. And I sort of created this little analogy afterwards that we work all our life, we get 2 weeks off maybe, and then with all the best years of our life, and finally when we retire, if we can retire, we buy a motorhome, we move to Phoenix, and we lawn bowl until we fall over from cardiac arrest. So there's got to be more to life. There has to be a way to have the quality of life that we're not figuring out yet. So it's sort of been a journey of mine to say, I'm not going that way.
All right. Very cool. I agree. You know, my life's kind of been that way as well. I mean, I've always looked, I come from a family where people are really long lived. So I would look at my elders and think, wow, you know, they just always had a zest for life. They were useful. And I thought the rest of the world doesn't seem to tick that way too much. But it inspired something in me that was like, you know, I wanted to live more regeneratively, and I knew that it was possible. And then now we're in this time of disclosure where we're learning things about possible seeding of humanity by ancient off-planet races, and that possibly our DNA was limited at one time. I know also the HeartMath Institute has done studies, and I write about this in my book, 21st Century Superhuman, that when we center in love, that supposedly 97% junk DNA, when we center in love, it begins connecting the way it's supposed to be connected. So we talk about the longevity genes, we talk about the immortality gene, whatever it was, we can say it was someone outside of us, or we can say it's been our own thought patterns of giving up that we are creator beings in this world. And we're learning to recover that. We're learning to open ourselves to the possibility that we actually can be very long-lived, and that we can be well, and that we don't have to decline in age. So tell us a little bit about your experience with that, Wayne.
Okay, and just on your comment is about the possibility of being well. If you look at the human race, they're one of the most sickly, to me, over in general, pathetic life forms on this planet. And here we're supposed to be a superior intelligence, but something's wrong. When I was a kid, I never heard of cancer until I'm not sure what age it was, maybe in my late teens. So many of these diseases just were unheard of then. So there has been this continual decay, and that's multifaceted. You and I could talk for 2 or 3 hours on that alone, as far as all the influences that are causing that. But it's like there has to be more. This is back to my original statement. There has to be more in a way of that when we get older, isn't this continual deterioration of health, so that the quality of life isn't so compromised.
Right. And you know, you have the privilege, the honor, the luck, the blessing of getting to live in a home with this miracle device that you created, which seems to be generating a really beautiful amplified field for you to live in. And I know you also have an office where you allow people to come and do sessions, and then you have an online sharing of it. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, yeah, the office, so that's basically a unit that's been set up, Miracle #1. It's been set up so that the public can come in, because the potential was so huge. We just had to start to share this when we started to see some of the improvements in people's well-being. But then for those that either do not have the physical capability or they're in a different location on this planet, the concept come up about, well, what would happen if we did a Zoom or teleconference meeting live and allowed people to, from the concept of remote mind, to come in and join, and we would do a group focus. And the experiences from that, it's just getting amazing. Some of the both physical improvements to people's bodies, but even just spiritual experiences, like getting out of that box quite a ways also. So there's something beautiful, and it really is as if the more of us get together with this, with a common intention, this field is increasing. And we understand that the more minds are involved on the same intention, that the energy is, I've heard squared, I've heard exponential, but either way, it's largely expanded as far as its impact.
Well, and you're already, I mean, obviously that happens where two or more are gathered, but then you're also in this amplified field with that happening. So that's incredible. I've participated and love those meetings. It's just amazing, the kind of multi-dimensional experience that it is.
And there again, Miracle is acting as that amplifier or that antenna to bring in a unified intention, I guess.
Yes.
Sometimes it's to define what's going on, but the energy in the house gets huge. And for me, I would not want to live a life anymore without one of these somewhere in my all the time.
That's amazing. I wonder if we just had a few of them around the world, if it would just help raise the field, that people are living in around the world.
Yes, because everything I understand is that these units start to interface.
Yes.
So the home is interfacing with the office. Yes, I have one that's going to be going somewhere else in the United States fairly soon. And
nice.
We have interest from Australia right now. So part of this in accomplishing other locations is exactly what you're talking about, that we get this field spread out, because you and I understand and have experienced this. To someone who hasn't, they have no reference point, but it is something that's really extraordinary.
Absolutely. And so it's one of the reasons we're doing this show, because we want to introduce the amazing experiences that we're having as we, you can listen to all this bad news in the world and all the terrible things that are going on and who's sick and what's going on with governments and economic systems. But when you start changing your own field and living in a way where you're surrounded with love, healing, and life amplification, we become the changers of the world in this state. And we know that just living in that kind of amplified field can start helping change the greater good.
Absolutely, because as you hear, we're all connected, and that's a whole nother conversation to us.
It is. It is. Well, go ahead, sorry.
And one of the other points that became very clear in the beginning, because I've never had to do, my world is construction, basically. So when I started moving into an arena where we were dealing with the health situation of individuals, so many people are without hope. And yeah.
I know, I got you, Wayne.
I know. It's to help someone that comes in and says, "You've given us hope."
Yeah.
It's my day.
Yes.
See, and I can't help the tears, and people have to understand this, because the energy is moving up through my chakras and into the fourth seal, and even beyond that now into here.
Nice.
So when it triggers that love component from that center, the body just responds. It's an automatic thing. So
that's beautiful.
Joanne says more men need to be able to cry out in public a little bit, but it's coming from Not someone that's cut my toe off, but just
I do the same thing. It's a good thing you're not activating me too. We'd both be sitting here crying, but.
I can do that.
So you've had some very amazing tests done that show the youthing of your body. Do you want to talk about that? Should I switch to screen sharing, or tell me what direction you'd like to go here?
First of all, what propelled me to come to this perspective that something is happening from a space-time shift in me, and not just me, but the environment around me. So the first thing, excuse me, best thing, the tissue's close by, was when we started out with this adventure, I also built some, what they were called, we called them plasma car units. So the idea was that they would assist the car with a plasmatic field. And one of the interesting things that was very consistent, and this has been confirmed from other people's units that they built, is that when you were on a drive for, let's say, an hour or 2 hours, that the time it seemed to get there was like 10 minutes. It was shrunk. The linear time on the clock was the same. So that was sort of like hit number one, and it never really clicked into me. Like
what a neat observation.
So well, it was interesting because one day we're on this journey, and I said to the lady next to me, I said, is this strange, or did you experience the same thing that we got here really quickly? And she said, yeah. So then it wasn't just me that was experiencing something unique. It was the people that were with me as well. So the second thing was when people started coming in and going into Miracle, we would get so often responses back, and especially when the time got elongated to 20 minutes, 30 minutes, because we start them off only at 10 minutes, because the impact of the field can be so influential to the body. I would come to say, okay, it's time to get out. And they would say, no, I just got in here. It's only been a couple minutes. So that was hint number two, that when you go into there, and of course, I was experiencing the same thing, that the time was shifting. There was something different. So then number three was people would keep saying, Wayne, you're looking younger. Wayne, you were looking younger. People that hadn't seen me, and sometimes it would only be a month, and I would get the same response. So like, okay, why is this going on? And yes, I've always been guessed younger in my chronological age than what I was, because my journey in looking after the body has been going on for 30 years now. And not just diet and exercise. I was fortunate very early on in my life, I came to the understanding that my thoughts and emotions were impacting my physiological state. Right. So I've been all my 30 years at slowly peeling that onion and getting more clear and more centered on how do I stay centered enough that I actually am changing that physiological aging process.
Right. And I can say the same thing too. I mean, I've dedicated my whole adult life to living on a healthy path. And you and I both know many people, both of us are in circles of people who have dedicated their lives to living on healthy paths. Right. However, there's another level here that's coming in, right?
Yeah, and that's going to be part two of what we want to discuss today, if we get to the time on this. So then,
we'll go a little longer than we talked about. So we'll just keep going.
I'd be surprised if we can get it in there, but so be it, unless we collapse some time here. The other one that really put sort of the icing on the cake is that we had a peace lily in the house, and it would come into bloom every so often, and then it would last about 2 weeks. Well, after Miracle was set up in the house, one day this same plant starts to go into blossom, and it lasted, and it lasted, and it lasted, way beyond its normal previous character or genetics. So I didn't check the time on that one. But when I did it again, I started taking photographs, and I was watching on the calendar, and it stayed in blossom for 3 months and 1 week, 13 weeks. So way outside of the...
Wow, that is amazing.
So what I realized then is that even the plant life in the house, and we don't have a lot of plants, mainly it's the lilies, that it was shifting their longevity as well.
And you know what's really neat is your astute observation as well. You know, you've been a really good observer of what's going on around you.
I've kind of been that way on most of everything in my life, so it's very natural for me by just applying a little bit of curiosity and scientific interest in what was happening here, because as I said, this is the big experiment for me as to what this can accomplish. So then we decided to go ahead and have my telomeres tested to see actually was there some difference going on, and then we have that slide, and we showed that briefly at the last talk we did also. And you can throw that one up there if you like.
Okay, give me just a second and we'll switch over to screen share. And we'll move us over here.
So the telomeres are little end coatings on the end of our chromosomes. And remember, this is a farm kid talking here. I'm not a biologist or anything like that. And as we go through life and we use the same DNA codes all the time, and that's part of aging, is just staying static in life, these little ends get frayed or frazzled or shorted out, depending on how you want to call it. So then each time a cell gets replicated, there's a less perfect copy that's done. So then that's part of this whole decaying. So it's sort of a gauge as to where we're at, relevant to how well they're still doing. So it came back that I was 18 years younger biologically than my chronological age, which is now 64, by the way.
Nice. Oh, happy birthday.
It doesn't matter to me because, as I said in a little discussion earlier, if a sea turtle can live to be 150 years old, why can't I?
Right. I like to call it Happy Eternal Day because I like to look at us as an eternal being, you know, rather than there's a beginning and an ending. And I think that's part of the illusion that we stepped into in this world, right?
But talking it and walking it are two different things.
Yes.
This is why we're here today, to share a little bit of this perspective. Because in my sharing and my understanding about how we go in and actually start communicating with the DNA, but to all of this, so many people that are in that 60 to 70-year-old age that are saying, wow, the decay in this body and I don't like where I'm going, and they're like, I'm all ears to option.
Right.
Now I'm not sure we're getting feedback from somewhere.
I think we're getting a little feedback because I can't mute. Let me get out of full screen here. And I'll just let you talk.
We can go to the second slide then. So last week we had a beautiful lady come into our office with a technology that's called Biohacking. And it was developed in Russia, and basically it's photon imaging, and it goes in and it senses the electrophoton output of the body by testing all your fingers, and we know that there's different meridians or energy points in the hands that feed back to all in the body. So it was interesting, the results that came back. So this is just more confirmation that it's not just a chronological thing that's happening, but biologically, I'm kind of like turbocharged. And it's true, in my life I am. I just so vital, so full of energy, so happy. It's a joy to be alive. And that isn't the case with all people. So then I also realize that there's not everybody that this.
So Wayne, talk us through this chart. I see you're in green in every area. Why don't you talk about each of these numbers and what they mean? I'm going to mute myself again for sound.
Well, I can't see quite the top of the first one, but I think that's talking about the emotional status of the body. Yeah, the emotional state. So basically what it's doing, it's reading different categories of our state of well-being. And if you're in that green category, you're considered to be spot on in an absolutely excellent state. So blue is where my readings were. So if we look at both the emotional pressure and then the energy and then the left-right symmetry and the organic. Yeah, it is organic. Organs, excuse me, I'm far away from the screen here. The organs balance, I'm just functioning beautifully on all areas of that. And my life confirms that physically, how I'm feeling and doing. It's just extraordinary.
Yeah, that is amazing. It's really, I mean, you're just in the peak place on every single one of these.
Yeah. So I just wanted to throw that one in there as well.
Yeah.
So then I suppose we can pop into the first slide, Wayne. He's not a computer guy, so then give me a chainsaw and I'm very, look what I did with Miracle with the chainsaw. So no, I'm joking there, but computers aren't my expertise. But I had to contemplate this for some time to start to understand what is going on relevant to this shift that's happening. And it's not just me, it's the plant. So this is a whole frequency impact that's going on. And if we understand, even in the most fundamental perspective, Einstein's theory of relativity, the faster you go or the closer you go to the speed of light, time changes. And it's interesting that if we look at the GPS satellites that are going around the Earth at a certain altitude and a certain speed, they actually have to recalibrate their time all the time, because there's a constant change relevant to their space-time and our space-time down here. So what I kind of come to the understanding is that this plasma is actually increasing the frequency in my body and the plants. So that, as was an example with the journey we went in the car, if we use 100 years, for example, as the red circle is, and I just did this in a non-linear, and then I have another one in more linear perspective, and that's 100 years. But if I'm vibrating at a higher frequency in space and time, and I can accomplish that same journey in less, that means I haven't aged as much, or I've used less time to accomplish that. And I'm not sure if that explains it very well, and it's tricky for me. I still kind of sometimes run this round and round to see if I've got this figured out.
You know, it's a really beautiful image. I really like it. I didn't know what it was going to mean until you explained it, but I get it, and it is very cool. And I think there's deeper and deeper levels we're going to get this at, because you could put a ring around the outside of it and go 120 years. You could go 350 years. You could go 1,000 years. But we're going up in vibrational frequency to be able to accomplish that. And I think there's many levels to understand here.
Yeah. And so the second picture kind of gives the same idea. Well, it is the same idea, but it's putting in a little bit more linear perspective, because we're quite familiar with understanding a wave. And maybe I had a little bit too much wine that day night when I drew that wave, but it's free-handed on the whiteboard. It's an idea that if 100 years is one complete wave or one complete cycle, and that's how long we live, if we're lucky, or depending on the body, unlucky, that if I'm vibrating at a higher frequency and I complete that wave in a lesser time frame, then I still have that extra, in this example, 25% longer life that I'm going to live. And it's interesting that we hear about some of the ETs that they live much longer than we do. Well, is part of that factor because they're in a different space-time frequency. They're vibrating at a higher speed, which is what I understand the beings from the fifth dimension are. So it's no wonder then, it's not that they're special beyond us, it's just that their environment is different from a frequency standpoint. So what the plasma is doing, it's turning up my volume and frequency some. And that's evident with the energy that's running in my body, the kundalini that's moving in my body, and people will actually even feel my field if I get a kundalini run. They've been standing 4 or 5 feet away from me, and they'll actually feel that energy run through them as well. And it's not all the time, but it's really quite amazing.
I'm hot just doing this show with you. I mean, I just feeling the energy and the energy of Miracle. I'm like, I can feel this heat in my body. So, and I'm pretty sensitive too.
Yeah. Well, mind is non-local. So if your mind is here, and we absolutely understand there's an intelligence coming out of here, and that's another whole conversation.
Absolutely. And, you know, I'm curious what you think. We can go on to the next slide and then go to this discussion. But, you know, there's many of us around the world now working with these plasma tools. And I know when you have a Magrav going in your home, or lots of bands around, or the health pens, we do feel that amplified field, and that more, I think we're plasmatically moving into a different dimension of time and space. And to come back to Miracle, one of the really beautiful things you did is you felt how critical the pi ratio was. You say phi or pi?
I said pi one time and I got rudely corrected, so it's supposed to be phi ratio if you want to be political.
Okay, but you really did work with that as a key. And it's funny because a friend of mine who's here with me, we have a lot of these snails outside that these birds catch in the lake here. And we're talking about putting dams inside of them because they're all, you know, they all grew on the phi ratio, and hanging them up around our field here.
Mm-hmm. As I've said before, if you look at a crop circle, that's all very exact geometry. and that creates, and geometry creates frequency, and math is all tied into this also, the mathematics and the harmonics tie into this, which is why I shared last time that I've created the web as a sort of an adjunct to that, and that's getting some really interesting results because we bring that in to both the office and to Mind Meld, and I actually just had it here. I think you can just peek at that. So I think
just hold it up a second. It's wonderful. And we can do that a minute when we get back on full screen. Let's look at the rest of your last slide here, and then let's come back to that.
I think that's it, Cary.
Oh, is that it? Okay. I'll stop sharing. Come back to us. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so there's my little web.
Yes, and so that's some health pens, and
that's what we call our blue tube, our big kahuna health pen, yeah. And then the web, and each one of these is a little plasma coil pack to add into that. And it's been quite an exploration in understanding the geometry of that. And this goes back to antiquity, understanding that within the web is the pentagram, and that the pentagram in antiquity stood for well-being and protection. And the pentagram in antiquity, when I researched that, it stands for well-being and protection. But it actually, in the proper geometry, is in the web, in the sacred geometry. And then these are just little coil packs that are added in here to increase the field strength. So the experiences, and we had just probably worth sharing because this is helping maybe other people in the world take this idea and go with it.
Yes.
We had a dog come into the office this week. It had got its head caught underneath the crawl space in the lady's house, severe nerve damage, and in huge pain. And of course, the vets, they wanted to get the scalpel right away, and both from cost and the reasoning behind it, the lady said no. They did do some laser work on the dog. It was getting a little bit better, but still, every time it would move, or so often, there'd be a big yelp from the pain. So she brought it into the office, this 100-pound mastiff lab cross. Big doggy. It had been in such stress, a lot of the hair was falling out already. Because any animal that goes into this stress mode, that's a response. And I've seen that so many times on the farm when there's an injury to an animal. So what we did is that she went into Miracle for a session, and I went into the room with her, and I just held the web. And the dog, it took him a little while to settle down. And finally, he come over and stayed by me a little bit, and then I put a little rope around his neck, and he sat down and let me hold the web on his neck. And he was panting quite a bit, both from the warmth in the office and just the environment. That stopped as well. And he probably sat there for like 5 minutes. And then he got up, he licked me 4 times, it's interesting, and he got up, it's like, I'm done. And by the time he come out of there, she was in totally 20 minutes for her session. The shaking had stopped, and we got reports back from her and a testimony this morning that she said the dog slept all night, that now he's out playing with the other dogs. She rarely has to give him a pain medication, and that he's just over the hump already. So there's an amazing experience from just probably 10 minutes with the web on his back. So
beautiful.
Potential also.
Beautiful. That's awesome.
Okay, so one point I should make clear here is that we at Plasma Balancing Systems, and we even have this on our consent or disclaimer form, we are not medical people. We don't make any claims because we actually understand the observer effect with the human being, that we're really determining our outcome. But what this plasma field seems to be doing is that when the cells are introduced to this field, they just go in and start rebalancing themselves, and they do their own repair. It's like putting them back into a natural state that they were originally in. And there's more experiences that we're having that confirm that. So this is not a medical instrument, it's just emitting a field, and the way the body goes with that and does what it needs to do. So
very nice. Well, Wayne, this is an awesome discussion. I love being around plasma energy devices. They definitely make my life better, more harmonious, more balanced, more at ease. And I think being at ease and feeling like we're well balanced, there's a real need for that in this world, because people are very stressed and worried, and those things are just over time, they wear us out. So feeling like you have energy and well-being is such a gift. So I want to thank you for the work you're doing, for being an experimenter, an innovator, an explorer of the new territory of human possibility.
Thank you.
Yes. Anything you would like to say in closing? And I'm sure we'll do an update sometime in the future, because this is just such wonderful stuff that you're doing. And I think there's a lot more that we'll be able to do on it.
Yes, you and I talked earlier, and whether we would do a second part to this today after we're off the air, because I know you want to keep them to a limited time. But it's the understanding that I've come to in my life about how to go and influence the staging, the aging, and to create an environment and a communication with the cells in our body that we actually are going in now and starting to access different DNA codes. Because it's there, it's just that we don't understand how to do that. And so it's been an interesting journey in my life, going back to, as I shared with you earlier, 1990 when I did the fire walk. And I couldn't understand, how is it that I just walked through 1,200 degree coals and didn't get burned? So that journey was what led me to ultimately understanding that I had the ability to go in and instruct my cells, and they will listen to what my instruction is, because they want an elongation of life and they want a healthy life as well. It's just that we're our worst enemy in what we do to them in mind and physiological application and environment, that they don't really have much of a chance to have a healthy life. But that state absolutely is a condition in which we can live.
Yes. And what you said that I liked when we talked about this is that there's a feedback loop between the cells and the brain. And when the brain begins to comprehend our life at a higher level, it begins feeding that information to the cells. And, you know, I've helped run alternative health clinics over the years and work with friends. And one of my big sayings is, you know, you've got to begin telling your body, you know, I say wellness exists and wholeness and longevity. It's just up to us to step into that. And when we live in this old kind of endless dialogue that says, I don't feel good, I'm getting older, blah, 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 that is sending a message to the body that the body is going to act upon. And yet when we can change that, go ahead.
Yeah, every thought and every emotion we have is impacting the body. But, you know, I've seen people when they come to our office sometimes, and they've got the understanding about the fact that the body can be younger and healthy, but they're a mess. And they'll say, you know, I'm 35 and I'm wonderful. No, you're not. And I don't say that to them. I allow them their perspective, but it's not enough. That little bit of verbal nothingness that's coming out of their mouth doesn't change the cellular structure, because it's not going in and changing the DNA codes that are being accessed. There's a specific procedure that has to be done to do that. And when you do that properly, you can feel the body just tingle. It's saying, yep, I got it. Thank you. You're giving me a better chance at being a healthy, happy cell. And with me, even sometimes the tears there'll be this burst of tears, and where that's coming from, I can't speak to. But the body's, in some ways, it seems to be just rejoicing at the chance to have an elongated life, because
Yes.
as we talked about before, we know, science knows there's an immortal gene.
Yes.
There's all these other genetic codes that are there for us. How do we tap into them? So that would be another discussion. And the people I share this concept with that are in their 60s and 70s and are, as I said earlier, are noticing this decay, it's sort of like, okay, we're really interested in some tool that we can apply now to have quality of life. And if you're happy and want this journey to continue, then ultimately the elongation of life. So that's kind of what we'll maybe share in the future.
Yes. Awesome, Wayne. Thank you so much for being here with me today. And I look forward to the ongoingness of this story and this adventure. And thank you for bringing new insights to our world.
It's always a great, what would you say? It's a wonderful feeling to be able to engage like-minded individuals and open-minded individuals so we can help to get this information out. And what you're doing really is very impactful. Because of our first interview, we've had people now from all over the world.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Ask questions, join us on Mind Meld.
Nice.
From many parts of the US now either say they're coming or actually have showed up already to utilize the office Miracle.
Nice.
The health issue that they have is, they said, worth taking the journey. So,
well, let's just give that information. So right now it's on Saturdays. You do kind of a open global opportunity for people to sit with Miracle in a group energy field, and you ask for a $10 donation, which is extremely reasonable, and make that work for people. And I know I've sat in on those. You want to just share a detail or two about that, and we'll put the link of your website under this video so people can find you.
Okay, so basically we called it Mind Meld with Miracle. And if you go to the link afterwards, there is a separate point on there that you will hit that will take you to the Mind Meld portion. And PBS and Mind Meld are two different entities. We will soon have a separate website for Mind Meld because it's getting enough importance that we want to separate the two. But you can go on there and make your donation. And it is a very humble $10 compared to what we could be charging, but we want this available to everybody. And if you're flush and you want to give us more, that's wonderful, because this money is going to go for future research into the expansion of this technology. And we will then send you a Zoom link. Zoom is a teleconferencing live format. It's free to join, and then you just come in at the prescribed time. And we do have a couple little videos there that we suggest you watch so you understand a little bit more about what we do. And we do some breathing in the beginning, and then we do a little invocation, and it all has purpose to it. And we go in and jointly do a half an hour focus on whatever you would like to change in your life. And the evidence is self-evident already. It's just amazing some of the experiences that are happening, regardless of where you are, it doesn't matter.
Awesome. Cool. We'll put those links under the video so people can find you. I want to remind everyone, breathe, smile, and love, because this is how we change ourselves to change the world. Join us on this great adventure in human possibility that is happening now on planet Earth as we move into the greatest phase of evolution in human history, into a new Earth and a golden age. Thank you for being with us. And Wayne, I look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks, Cary.
Ciao. Many blessings, everyone. See you soon.